which we've looked at before to get some HDRIs that has a few different fabric textures. These are great just because they're free, so feel free to follow along. I'll be using some of these for the course. And another site is this site here, Texturing XYZ. Now this, in my opinion, is the highest quality fabric materials that I've been able to find on the internet. They also have really great skin textures and things like that, so check this out if you're interested. And then one more thing is the Materialize tool, which is something that's really great. It's a free software that lets you take any picture that you find on the internet or take pictures on your own of fabric that you have lying around, and it will tile them for you and turn them into actual textures with normal maps and displacement and roughness and all of that. So this is something really nice to check out if you're looking to go the free route. So you can just make any type of texture. Explorer here. Let me just drop this down. And we go to our local disk, users, public, but first off, we need to get set up with some basic textures. Our jacket here, and just go into our shader graph, and I'm going to type in texture, and I'm going to go into our course. Boxes here, and then I'm going to plug this directly into our diffuse. Okay, and then when okay, so you can see we've got the color reflections, just like we did with our background. Create something more matte. It's already quite interesting. But we don't want to stop here. We want to add even more layers of detail. And then we can use this slider here to increase the intensity of our bump, maybe even just 2, just to see. And we'll just render this, and we'll see a difference between no bump and with bump. Not be super apparent from this distance, but let's just zoom in a bit with our alt camera, and maybe we'll be able to see the difference here. Let me just re-render this. So we can see with our normal app. And in there, there's settings to increase the intensity of all that, but I think we can do something better. So let's just try to use some of those textures from inside of Marvelous Designer. So if we just go into here, and you can see huge difference from the normal map. To something like 1. So you can see really nice to add this extra level of detail here, maybe even smaller. So this is a great way to get some quick detail from the things that are already vertical lines here. You could do that. And you could even just really crank this down. As you zoom in, you'll start to see that micro detail picked up. Nice, so that's cool. Let's just see from a distance how that looks. It's nice. Might be just too big, too small rather. So let's bring this down to 12, and then even at this distance, you can see we're starting to see some of those lines. So that's what we're looking for. So let's just turn off our redshift view. I'm just going to save this. And now we can take this texture that we made with this simple bump map, and we can actually add another layer of detail. So we can even add something like a displacement map. So let me just go in and grab the displacement map I want to use. And I'll provide this in the project notes. Micro wrinkles. This is really quite nice. So adds another layer of detail really easily without actually having to modify any geometry or reduce your particle distance down to a ridiculously low amount inside of Marvelous Designer, which can be really hard on your CPU. So that's how that Let's just go in and grab a redshift tag. So object, got that here. And then in geometry, we just want to turn on tessellation, which is going to help subdivide our mesh. It's actually going to let the displacement be higher quality. I'm going to reduce the subdivisions. We don't need too many. And then in the displacement, I just want to turn this on. And I think I'll reduce it down to something like 0.5. And then also we have this turns it into micro bump details, but for our purposes, these are quite large, so we don't actually want it to do that conversion for us. So we're just going to turn that off. And let's just see how that looks. So you can see it's added some interesting micro details, some micro wrinkles in this area. I think it's pretty apparent here. So let me just grab our window. So you can see all of these additional All right, so that's all well and good, but we actually want to add a lot more variation further still. So let's just go through and finish off the rest of our texturing. So we've got plain white textures. Okay, so now if we take this new texture that we've created and we just copy and paste it to the rest of our garments, and okay, and you can see it's directly ported over all those other textures, colors that we had. And since we duplicated this, it actually has the bump map, normal map, I should say, and the displacement that we had from our previous section. So in order for that displacement to show, and then I think I actually want to alter the bump map here. So let's just or our jacket rather. Yeah. Using a different technique, something that we can use to create a totally different type of material. So I just want area I want to make into a net type texture. So if I just go zoom in here, we go to our face selection. If I just double click on these areas, it's going to select this whole piece here. Let me just hide our model so we can go on the inside here. And that way we can select the inside too, because remember we're using the thick version, which has two sides. Just gonna undo here, get back to our main view. Okay, and then we can just drag and drop this new material that we created and put that right on top. Let me just disconnect our diffuse so we can see the difference in color. Okay, so we can see we've got a new selection. And then we're going to take one of these textures and what we can use is something called a ramp. So we can use this ramp. And so we've got black to white here. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow us to adjust the different levels of black and white in our image. So now wherever we have black in this image, it's going to be totally see-through. And wherever we have white, it'll be solid. So if I increase this level here, you'll be able to see this material will fade out as it's more see-through. And we can just crunch these together to create a fabric with this sort of micro holes. Here. So you can see that's updated in our view. And then we can just render this and we can see what that looks like. You see the solid texture. So in order to create that micro netted look, we actually want to drop this way down. So we can see we've created this nice netting texture. Let's use our render region real quick. So we've got these micro holes and we can adjust the levels of this. Even bring down the white. Let's try 6. There we go. So now we've got that netted look that we were going for. So this is just a really interesting way to use different textures. This is actually the roughness. So normally this would be plugged in, if you were using this conventionally, be plugged into the roughness here. So we can do that as well. And that's just going to control the roughness, essentially the shininess of our texture here. So wherever it's white, it'll be totally glossy, and wherever it's white, it will be totally. And maybe I just want to bring down the displacement here. Might be too high. There we go. So that's fixed it. And then in our settings here for our netting, continue to tweak. A lot of this is really push and pull. You'll tweak a couple things, something will change, and you'll need to make some adjustments to another part of the material. One, we're going to make some modifications. So in our material, we've got these presets. Right now it's set to custom, but I just want to go down to lead. This is going to totally change our material to be this. Okay, so now you can see instantly we've got the rest of the garment and this outer part here. And this lets you really see those micro details that we added with the displacement map. Yep. And I think I want to use this material actually we don't need this diffuse anymore, so we can delete that. And I'm going to use this texture on our bodysuit as well. So this is going to override everything to the left here. There you go. So you can see, got this totally different metallic look going. it's looking at the facing edges, what's facing the camera. So wherever it's not, it's going to be white. We've done. So you can see wherever it is black, it's going to show up as red. So you can adjust this gradient and start to get some interesting metallic sheens. That is based on what part of the geometry is facing the camera. So when it's really intense, you can get something like this. I don't think I want this to be quite so intense, so I'm gonna drop this down. And maybe I don't want it to be so intense. So you can drop the overall value down, and that's going to darken up this texture. Okay. All right. So from this point, we can go in and make more tweaks to our displacement, vary up different textures. This is showing up kind of green, so I can go in here and adjust this. I wanted to desaturate it a little bit more. And then maybe I want to add a different texture to the inside of the jacket, just for even more. And then we can always go in here and increase. And we've also got roughness here, so we could up the roughness, really create a super soft. Right, and maybe I want these pants to be a little different, so in our pants texture, that we wanted something really dark for this area. Or something a bit more desaturated, but a bit brighter. Just play around with this until you find something that you like. It's looking pretty interesting. A bit brighter. Okay. And those are our basic textures for this. So just keep playing with this. So maybe we want to use the same metallic texture on our shoes down here. So we can just copy this. And maybe we don't need the displacement now on the shoes, so we can just turn that off. And then we can use this new material on our sneakers. So now we've got some metallic shoes. Put this on. Just to break up this area. And you can see soles here. And this can be done on any shoes that you find. So I'm going to apply that new texture. And then if we just drop this on the shoes and hit render, let's use our render view here. Okay, so you can see it's totally glassness. You can see the toes poking through. So let's adjust that. So down here in the scatter scale, this is where we can create that kind of gummy see-through subsurface look that we want. You can get something interesting. And you can still see the toes through here, so oftentimes I'll just go in and delete the feet, as we don't necessarily need that geometry in here. All right. So that's a basic subsurface material. And then let's just use the same material that we had on the sunglasses up here. So sunglasses, we use the metallic texture. And then let's make a new create a new material. And we're going to apply that to the lenses. Now if we just hit render, we can jump in here and see. Got that new material, and then we can go into our glass. So if you wanted a just simple glass material, they've got a nice preset in here for you. But I want to create something a bit more interesting. So we can go down here to our refraction and transmission, and in the color here, we can get some detail into this eye area. Okay, so that's a really simple material, but looks nice nonetheless. It's interesting to have this on our garment up here. So this one, and we can just use a color correct for this. So color correct node can be very similar to something like a hue saturation in Photoshop, but all you do is plug in your texture into the input, and then the color correct goes right into the diffuse, and then you can make some modifications to it, like pulling the saturation down. And we can so we've got something a bit more gray. That's the basics of texturing our garments. We can always come back and make some changes based on how everything ends up looking once we add some skin textures and hair. But thanks so much for watching, and now we're going to move on to skin texturing.